You're live.
Great, thank you, Roland. And good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 11th meeting of the Finance Committee of the Norwalk Board of Education. I am the committee chair, Colin Hostin, joined by my colleagues Diana Carpio and Kara Nelson-Bakey, along with our CFO Linda Asmani and other NPS staff. And tonight we're going to start with public comments. We did not get any via email, and it looks like there's no members of the public in attendance here on Zoom. Fact check me on that. I think we're good.
Yeah, there's nobody there.
Okay, great. So we'll go right into our action items for tonight, starting with an update on our FY23 operating budget, and I'll hand it over to Mr. Asmani to get us started.
All right, let me share my screen here. Let's see. All right. You're seeing this?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So just to recap, this is, I feel like we start with this slide every single meeting to just kind of show where we are, but I bring this up only because the budget is now passed by the city. The Board of Estimates and Taxation passed their budget, passed the city budget earlier this month. The tax levies are set and the mill is set, so there is no going back to the budget as adopted. As you recall, these were the three buckets of our request for the year. They included a budget with the first bucket, the 9.3 million, the 4.5%, the incubator, and then addressing the ESSER was not included as part of the budget. And so as discussions we've had is obviously, the district is interested in moving forward with the incubator. We've been having conversations with the mayor and his staff on how we could do that. We had, I think the last meeting we had was late last week. At that meeting, and recent developments have also occurred since then. In addition to this 1.8 million, I shared with you that we did get a hit on the health insurance going up. And so we were trying to figure out a way to move that forward. So one of the things that we've had internally within the board, within our public school system and with the mayor is how can we make this work? And so where we've ended and what we're exploring now is looking at how the year end is going to look for us. Annually we have, the state allows us to carry over about 2% if we have 2% left over, which is about $4 million based on the 208 million approved budget. And anything above that, the 2% is automatic. We take it to the city, but state law requires that they approve it. And then if there's anything above that, it's basically a request and we have conversations with the city based on priorities. And so what we're exploring this year is projecting where we think we're going to end this year, given the vacancy rates this year, which were offset by some of the substitute costs, but trying to explore the possibility of funding these two big buckets with leftover funds. We don't know how that's going to look like, but our goal is to try and maximize that. Obviously, we'll bring that to you as a recommendation for you to approve, but that'll be the recommendation that would come to you. And then after we've seen where we're left with that, see if there's still a bit left that we would then perhaps go back to the city. But we anticipate between the Sono incubator, the making up for the health insurance, and obviously each year we do have other operational curriculum related things that we weren't able to fund in the budget. And we look at these year-end savings as a way to fund those without raising taxes for those. So we'll put that list together and bring that to you. But essentially that's where we are with the city. So we're working together on that to explore options for making this happen. And that's really what I have by way of the operating budget update. On the capital budget, it was approved as I shared last month. The final process with the operating budget is the bonding authorization, and that is going through the process now. The Board of Estimates approved basically all of the projects. Those that are eligible for bonding were approved. The Common Council Finance Committee is going to look at that next, and then eventually the Common Council will approve the bonding authorizations for those approved projects which is the final step in creating those projects and allowing us to move forward with those projects. And so that is the FY 22-23 budget update for tonight.
Thank you, Linda. And just for the record, going back to the operating budget, when we're talking about leftover funds, I think sometimes people kind of sometimes misunderstand that and think we have money squirreled away. This is you're talking about funds from the FY 21 budget, correct?
No, this is 21-22, the year that we're in now that ends June 30th.
I see.
So essentially, you know, we had budgeted for a full complement of staff, and you know, we've had challenges with turnover and recruitment, and so there's some savings this year. There are some salaries that we just wouldn't pay because we don't have the people. However, some of that is offset because we had to pay higher substitute teachers to cover for those positions. And so what we do typically around this time of year is do a somewhat of a projection of where we think we'll end up to get a sense of what that number is. And then as we close out the year, we have a definite number of where we're actually ending the year. And so state statute, and this is the same case on the city side as well, is that you don't always fully expend 100% of your budget, but then it also gives you an opportunity to deal with those unbudgeted costs based on these savings, and then also have the discussion if there are things that weren't included that are priorities for the boards or the common council. This is another way of paying for those without re-taxing the citizens, because this has already been taxed for. I don't know if I answered that question, Colin.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to clarify because we sometimes do have excess funds at the end of the year that we are allowed to roll over partially into the following year. What we're saying is we would apply some of those savings to the extra insurance costs, funding the Suno incubator, and anything else that comes up with regard to the curriculum.
Correct. And if we don't have enough, and if we fall short, then we would obviously have to explore how do we make up the difference. But I think that we will have some money applied towards at least these are the two biggest ticket items for this year as we close out the year.
Great, thank you so much for clarifying. Okay, are any other questions or comments from Diana or Kara? All right, if not, we can thank you for that update, Linda. I know we look at that slide every time, but I guess it's never
Right.
done until it's done. So we're getting closer and closer. Next on the agenda, we have our budget transfers for the month.
Yes, sorry, I'm going to skip to the last slide. Okay. So this month, again, we have budget transfers just under 180,000. And basically this is, we go through this exercise monthly where we're reallocating funds within the district, within the budget, just between two line items. The same example is what I shared before. We have some areas, for example, in this scenario, we're moving funds to cover some operational costs in building for construction services. We have other professional services at Center for Global Studies, and then some gifted and talented teacher over at Jefferson. And the source of funding are these other accounts in the from column where we had budgeted funds, but we're not fully utilizing those funds for that purpose. And it's creating that opportunity to do that. As we get towards the end of the year, and Kristen is also on the call if you have any specific questions on these. As we get to the end of the year, this list is longer because we cannot close the books with deficit accounts. So we have an extensive process of reviewing these lists and these transfers. And past practice has been, we have brought you a memo that you give authorization to the superintendent and the CFO to make these transfers, a blanket approval to make these transfers, and then we bring them to you after they're done. But that just allows us to close out the year timely without any delay, especially as we get to the busy year-end activities. But for this month, this is the list that we have for you.
Great, thank you. I think it seems pretty straightforward to me. Diana, Kara, any questions?
No, looks straightforward too. Thank you, Lunda.
Oh, just
Yes.
to be clear, these unfunded projects at Roten are classified as operating, not capital expenses, even though they're painting and.
Right. So these are projects that we, if they're not big dollar items and we can fund them, like painting hallways and stuff within the operating budget, that's what we would typically do rather than include them in the other bigger ticketed items on the operating budget.
All right. Okay, well, if there are no objections, I would like to make a motion to approve these budget transfers to the full board for approval. All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. All right, that's unanimous. Thank you. All right. Moving right along, we have an action item for a contract renewal for specialized transportation services.
Good evening again. So we are going to be recommending to the board, not a contract renewal, actually, we're going to be looking at a new 3-year contract with 2 of our current vendors, which we're using for special needs door-to-door services within Norwalk and outside of Norwalk. They've been supporting Norwalk for a combined 15 years. They're companies that we have an intimate relationship with, that know our population, that have experienced drivers and paraprofessionals that ride on board with our students who do go out of district. And what we're looking at is the recommendation of 3 years versus a 1-year contract. We did speak with with 2 of our experts, our transportation consulting firm and a business development agent, and regarding going out to bid, due to the volatility of the market, the bus driver shortage that's nationwide, that there are districts and states that are still experiencing. Thankfully, in town, we've come out of that hole, so to say, and we're doing well. But also the rising fuel costs. There's been a spike in contract pricing that it's really affected the nation. Within the state of Connecticut, what we've seen is between a 6% to 24% increase in pricing. So having that conversation with our experts and, contacting our other districts, which we're a part of there's about 10 districts we're in a consortium with in Lower Fairfield County, from Greenwich to Westport and up to Danbury and Trumbull. So we have a great team that we work with, other transportation managers and supervisors that we can, work within our infrastructure and the industry and share information with each other. One of our neighboring towns just went out to bid this year, and their incumbent vendor was a 24% increase. So seeing that, we're going into a serious budget year next year, we were able to talk with our current vendor, and they came in meeting our budget requirement. So they are coming in at the requested 3% increase. And we are looking at for year 1, year 2, would be 5%, and year 3 would be 7%. And so in year 5, we would be looking at covering the costs of that have been incurred over time with COVID, driver incentives to retain drivers as well as hire new drivers, the COVID safety regulations and that we had to meet, as well as insurance costs. And then in year 3, they would be looking at that percentage increase to cover the cost of a new fleet. to be compliant with the current contract. So we are making that recommendation. We will need to complete a bid waiver, which we have to initiate, that's required to initiate a new contract as we're not going out to bid. And so, you know, it would allow us to continue to maintain a relationship with vendors that we have grown over the years, that are, again, well prepared, fully staffed, and able to continue that safe and reliable transportation that we've been receiving for our most needy population.
Thank you, John. And just to recap, you recall that we recently you approved a revised purchasing policy. And within that policy, we maintained the bid waiver process. This was already in the old policy, but this gives you the opportunity to incur these types of savings. When we feel like there's a better way that benefits everybody, the taxpayers, on a renewal like this, especially seeing what we're seeing, we have an existing vendor, a partner who's already set up, they're already doing business with us. And if they can come in at a 3% when everybody around us in the consortium are looking at 10 to 24%, this is appropriate. However, we cannot make this decision unilaterally. We have to come to you as the policy dictates for that bid waiver. The other bid waiver that is not on tonight's agenda, but you'll be seeing as well, is you recall that for the efficiency study, they also, they're going to help us with a procedure manual for the district. Part of that procedure manual involves them coming in, looking at processes and procedures, and then recommending and putting it in writing so that we have a manual. Traditionally, when you go out for a bid like that, the firm that you hire would come in and do 60% of the work that Evergreen already has done. And so because Evergreen can do this, we will again come to you in a similar fashion to say, we'll be requesting a bid waiver. It makes financial sense. They know us, they've done half of the work already, rather than have a new firm come in and talk to you and whatnot. So essentially that's what we're doing here. So we're asking for a bid waiver so we can enter into this 3-year contract, and it will go to the, and then with that, we'll have the superintendent sign it and enter into agreement. Thank you, Joanna.
Great. That makes a lot of sense to me. So do we need to make a motion to approve this this bid waiver, this contract renewal?
Yes, if you could.
Yes. Okay, great. All in favor of approving this transportation contract, say aye, raise your hand. Excellent. So that'll go on to the full board for approval next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joanna.
Thank you. Thank you for all that legwork.
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Joanna did a lot of work on this one.
Yeah, out of curiosity, Joanna, are we seeing, when we look at these nationwide increases in transportation costs, are we seeing the trickle down effects already of the increased fuel prices? Or is that only going to get worse?
We are not, because we went to propane, right, 2 years ago, and we've seen, we'll be seeing a cost savings over time. We're still working through there's a fuel cap that we have in agreement with our type 1 vendor Durham. And so they'll be picking up the cost, within this next month or so. But we do also get a federal reimbursement because we went clean fuel. So we'll be seeing that maybe in the fall. We have to submit to it for it, and then we'll see that money come back to us.
Awesome. That's a win-win.
Yeah,
That's great.
all good things. We're
Yeah.
trying.
Mhm. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Okay, moving right along. Next on the agenda, we have our monthly financial report.
Sure, and you did receive the narrative report. As you have, I do have some slides to walk through if you wish me to, but if you've read the report and if you have direct questions, I'd be happy to answer questions, and I'll follow your lead, Colin, whatever you'd like me to do.
Well, let me just throw it out to Diana and Kara. Looking at the report that you sent out with the agenda, Linda, nothing stood out to me as particularly out of the ordinary. I don't know if there's anything that you think we should be paying attention to in this month's report.
No, not at this time. I think as I led when we were talking about how we were going to fund the Sono incubator and fund our health insurances, we're trending well financially. We're not going to exceed our approved budget this year. We do anticipate to have some savings at year end that will allow us the flexibility to resolve some of these financial issues. So by way of alarming trends, there are none. And we anticipate coming under budget at year end, giving us some flexibility in addressing some of our future needs.
Terrific.
That's good news.
Other questions or comments from the board?
Nothing from me.
Linda, kind of picking up on what I was just asking Johanna about. I noticed in the narrative, you mentioned that, for example, in food services, we are seeing some increases in relation to general inflation. Is that something that that we need to be concerned about as we continue the rest of this year and into next year? Like, what do you think our biggest risks are in terms of inflation?
Well, I mean, we're going to see general price increase. We were looking, I think the superintendent and I, on an unrelated matter, but we were looking at inflation numbers, and I think the last inflation number was almost 9%, which is extremely alarming. I think on food services, the bigger issue that we're going to have as a district is the 100% free and reduced lunch program that the federal government was doing due to COVID. That is going away. And so Ms. Sandra Fayos and I have had conversations with Chartwells, our provider, to kind of see what that impact would be. You recall several years ago, we don't turn away children when they show up to get food. That's a secondary, the follow-up is secondary to that. And so historically, we've had years where we've actually run deficits in the food services account, which is not unique to Norwalk. The past couple of years, because of this free and reduced lunch program, we haven't had that issue. So we've been able to have some surpluses in the food services fund. But going into next year, one of the things that we're really looking at is that. I think the last time we had a deficit was just about $500,000. The year before that, this was 2 years pre-COVID. The year before that, we were like 800,000. And so this is transferring funds from the general fund to the food services fund at year end, like we're doing now for the health insurance and the incubator. So that is a bigger issue, I think, for us than the general inflation that we're going to be seeing. I think we are seeing more, some of the costs in the food services is we are feeding more people. Kids are coming to school, whereas last year they weren't. And so we had a lot more remote, and we're providing more meals this year. And so the staff that it takes to provide those meals is also an added cost when you compare year over year. But I think the bigger issue is the reimbursement rates. And I think the superintendent plans to have that discussion is, as a district, how do we move forward with those that don't qualify for the lunches, and how do we make them whole and continue to feed our children?
Great. Thank you. Just helpful to keep an eye on that.
Yes.
Our ultimate goal is that the federal government sees the benefit of providing free lunch to all children and continues to do this, but that's wishful thinking. But something that definitely I'm hoping that is further taken into consideration at a federal level. Because when we talk about a free education, we have to talk about it in all sense of the word. And, kids can't be in our buildings without being fed. So it should just be part of what we do for children and families. So we want to engage our legislative officials in conversations about how they can help us push the conversation around this, because I think it's really important that all children have access to meals without a financial burden being applied to the families. And COVID was a perfect example that it is possible.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. 100% agreed. Okay, if there's no other questions, that brings us to the end of our agenda. It was a very brief but meaningful meeting.
Colin, if you don't mind, I think since the public is here, if you could share some of the good news. You were at a press conference today that has some financial impacts.
Absolutely. Yes, we got some really great news for Norwalk in this year's state budget. Thinking of our capital plan, we've already talked about our plans for Norwalk High School, which we're going to be reimbursed 80% for by the state. The initial budget was $225,000, and the initial amount approved from the state was $189,000, leaving a bit of a delta that we had to figure out how to fill. And now the revised approved amount is 239,000 million. I'm sorry.
Million, please.
$239 million. So I think we're going to get a state-of-the-art pool and a state-of-the-art school at Norwalk High School. But wait, there's more. In this year's state budget, there is an approval for a 60% reimbursement rate for all new construction projects in Norwalk for the next 25 years. So I don't even know how to explain how huge that is. I think when we
Wait, say that again, Colin. Say it again.
Yeah. So Kara, just so that the public understands, Norwalk currently for building new constructions gets about 22% reimbursement from the state, and if we do a renovate as new project, as we're doing with Cranberry, we get about 33% reimbursement. In this year's budget, there's an approval to make that reimbursement rate 60% for all new construction projects for the next 25 years. Wow. And that includes any project that is submitted for approval by the end of this year, which includes our South Norwalk School. Just thinking about that one project, I think that extra reimbursement rate, which is about triple the amount that we initially budgeted for, is going to be like another $30 million for Norwalk taxpayers. Pretty amazing. We're still kind of absorbing all of it. It was a great press conference. We added in Stamford because a lot of those benefits and benefit Stamford as well. You know, part of the issue has been that the formula by which they calculate these reimbursement rates has in a way punished cities like Norwalk and Stamford for having high land values, which don't actually reflect the actual wealth of our residents. And so this I think goes a long way to correcting that. And we want to thank Senator Bob Duff and our entire delegation for getting this through. It's really more than certainly I could have hoped for.
Wow.
This is going to be completely a game changer for all of our kids.
It is
That's awesome news.
And as
I
I was
think you
saying
recall
before,
in the earlier presentations, Norwalk Public Schools has engaged on a massive reinvestment in our infrastructure. And a lot of times the conversation we've had is the impact on the debt and how much debt this is going to be on the taxpayers. And so the fact that you're able to offload so much on the debt, it does allow us flexibility to do other improvements and infrastructure developments within the community. So it's just great news in so many ways.
You know, and I think that's a great point, Linda, because one of the things that Senator Duff said is that one of the arguments that helped him up in Hartford was the fact that Norwalk has been investing so much in our schools in the last decade or so. So, you know, we've shown the state that we're putting our money where our mouth is, and you know, the city is well managed financially. We've got a AAA bonding. We're doing everything right, and so they're meeting us halfway. And as I was saying before, I think we started broadcasting this meeting on YouTube. The legislation is written so that it applies to any construction projects submitted for approval in the next 25 years. It doesn't mean that it has to be completed in the next 25 years. So let's get to building.
Seriously.
Right?
It's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, what do we need?
I was going to say facilities is going to be busy.
Oh, yes.
Well, Sandra already knows. I told her, take your vitamins because you're going to have a lot of work in the next few years.
Right.
Yeah, Sandra was at the press conference. She said, "Yep, I'm going to be busy." So it's a good problem to have for sure.
Yeah.
Listen, we want to be busy
great.
in this way. I think this is going to be a game changer, not only for the things we're trying to do instructionally, but it allows us to well align our facilities to the future ready focus that we have in terms of instructional model. So it's it's going to align so perfectly with our strategic plan as well, and the facility study that enabled us, with the help of Bob Duff, to organize a 25-year plan for our schools.
Absolutely. We've got the plan ready. Now we've got the reimbursement rate. I'm just excited for our entire learning community, our teachers, our families, and most of all, our students who are going to benefit from this for generations to come.
For sure. Great news.
Okay, and so that's a really happy note to end the meeting on. I want to thank our CFO, Linda Osmani, the entire team at NPS, Dr. Estrella, Diana Cara. Great meeting. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening, and we'll see you soon.
All
Oh,
right.
motion to
Good luck,
adjourn.
everybody.
All in favor of adjourning? There we go. Meeting